If you're looking for Magic cards, look no further than Flipside Gaming. They have all the latest Magic singles and product that you need to actually leave the house and battle in Magic the Gathering. And right now, if you would like to save 10% on your orders from Flipside Gaming, use the promo code CGB at checkout. That is promo code CGB. Hello, welcome back to another day in the arena. It's me, it's CGB, and today we're going for Mythic again, and this time I'm showing the Jeskai deck that I'm using. Right now, it's all about creatures, dealing with creatures, and also just hoping that if we're in a control matchup that we draw enough Chemister's Insights and search for Azcantas to hit our land drops and resolve the first Niv-Mizzet. It's tough because I really want third Nivs and fourth Nivs for that kind of matchup, and without sideboard you don't get that option. I've settled on 2. I do think it's the right number. Aside from that, most of the deck is about dealing with creatures. I like having a Rawl because it's both a way to close the game against the aggro decks, but also the minus can kill a Niv-Mizzet permanently if I'm in the control mirror. So I think Rawl earned a spot, and on 5 I pretty much want to be slamming a Planeswalker all the time. The games that I lose the most often are the ones where I get to 5 mana. I've cleaned up the board, I've done some things I need to do, but I don't have Teferi to play, or I don't have Niv to come down unprotected. You know, if I play an unprotected Niv in that kind of span of time and it gets Chupacabra, I'm just nowhere, and I'm waiting for something to show up. So having another Rawl has done well for me. And then other cards, I like this Blink of an Eye. It's hard to explain. When you untap 2 lands and then the opponent on their turn plays Eldest Reborn, you want to be able to blink your Teferi. You want to be able to blink their Wild Growth Walker when it gets too big for the Clarion. That's usually where it comes up the most, although Seal Away is good for that too. And then there's 2 Revitalize, 2 Shock. So instead of 4 Revitalize, I'm using some amounts of Shock. A few things here. One, if you kill their Lava Runner, or their Fanatical Firebrand, or their Viashino Pyromancer, or their Runaway Steamkin, rather than revitalizing instead, what you might have done that turn, it's kind of like you gained the life anyway, because you killed the creature first, and it keeps them without traction on the battlefield, which keeps them playing more things. Second, you often, when you're playing the Niv game with the opponent, Teferis get minused, and Rawls get minused, killing the Niv-Mizzets or putting them back in the deck. This is where Shock is very nice in a way that a Revitalize isn't, or any other like regular removal spell, where your Shock can reach out and kill that Teferi or kill that Rawl, which is very nice. It also goes well with Niv itself as a redraw when it comes down, but I still want some Revitalize, because if you don't have a good start and that red deck just gets you down to 3 life, it's like you already lost and there's just a ticking time bomb. Also, I love Negate, and I usually run 2. I'm trying out 1 Spell Pierce as a bit of a gotcha for the deck, as 1 mana interaction can be pretty huge. And yeah, that's pretty much where we're at. I may even change it a little bit as I play. I don't think a day has gone by where I haven't changed the makeup of this deck in some way. So this is certainly a deck I keep tweaking and working on. Our hand has a lot of good things going for it. We have to draw a blue source. It is what we have the most of in the deck. This is a gambler's hand, but I'm gambling. We have a Clarion, which is usually the hardest. The thing that will cost you the most games is not having Clarion. And look at that. Our opponent is gonna open on a Steam Vents. I'll play out my Steam Vents. We'll just look them in the eye, and I'm sure they'll play their Opt, which seems to be going around. I just find this card so low impact. Even in my Jeskai, I don't run it. I much prefer Chemister's Insight from, more cards. Our opponent willing to definitely hit themselves. And it looks like we're up against Drakes. Tough matchup. Tough matchup. It makes that important card we kept in the deck, Deafening Clarion, look silly. Not unwinnable, though. And with a Negate in hand... Yep. Let's just get the mana open right away. We also have an Expansion Explosion, which might be decent. And here comes the Enigma Drake itself. Dive down, of course, a serious problem when we play these matchups. And I will play the Foundry tapped, as I'm likely to get in some trouble later and have to pay life. Here comes the Drake. Let's go for the Seal Away. If they have the dive down here, I take an extra point of damage, but if they don't, we get away with 1. And it looks like we get away with 1. Does the opponent have a follow-up threat? It's a charter course. Okay. Well, I'm not too bummed. I'm honestly not upset. And I think they just missed a land drop. So you're telling me there's a chance. Teferi's getting ready to come down and do some work. Negate's available. If our opponent does play, like if they tap out for Crackling Drake this turn, Teferi can put it back in the deck. But then Shock can kill Teferi, which is a big negative. So instead our opponent goes for Discovery, and they may be missing their land drops here. I'd rather use my Negate to protect Teferi. It's a tempting Negate target, let me put it that way. But I think I let this resolve. I don't think my opponent can put down a good threat after this, so Teferi's likely to come down. And I don't usually think, well, they might have a Spell Pierce. We'll have to think about this. Let's see what they do. There's going to be some tough decisions around this Teferi, I think. Pretty gutsy to slam Teferi on 5 when Spell Pierces are in these types of decks all the time nowadays. We do see our opponent bind one. It sort of implies they have another. So they're going for another Discovery, which means Teferi will resolve, which means I want the Negate to protect Teferi after it resolves. Chemister's Insight draws both the Shocks in the deck, but as a tag team, perhaps they can take out some Drakes. And here we go. I need a hero.
Keep up the pace.
Holding out for a hero till the end of the night. We'll untap some red, we'll show white as well. Here comes Crackles, but with that trigger on the stack, before our opponent can play another land, we're definitely hitting them up double shock. Let's get that thing off the board. And I bet there's another Drake, and there might be a Niv, so we gotta tick this Teferi up quick. Spell Pierce could come in very handy.
No time for a break.
Absolutely none. I think this is a discard a land, draw 2, then untap 2. I don't think there's any reason not to do that. It's very unlikely I need expansion and negate and spell pierce on the same turn. And I'm going to discard the land because we still may need 2 Deafening Clarions to clean up a ridiculous board, even as risky as that can be. They can tag team a Drake. Alright, Teferi, let's go. Once Teferi gets ahead in loyalty in this matchup, it's a lot better, and Shock coming in, I'm not going to counter it. I'm going to try to save that to fight over my opponent's creatures, but we'll see. That may come back to bite me. Teferi loyalty is pretty valuable. Here's an opt. We don't have Arclight Phoenix. This appears to be the new version of Drakes. The newer version of Drakes. And here comes Enigma. With 2 mana open, what else does our opponent get up to? Huh, they want to discover. It's tempting to spell pierce that, although it's not clear what they're trying to discover. What I'm probably going to do on my turn is double Clarion. What spells would I have to spell pierce? A spell pierce. I would have to spell pierce a spell pierce or dive down when my opponent plays Niv, but if I have a high enough Teferi, I don't have to be afraid, and I already have a negate. Alright, I am going to spell pierce this discovery. And then what I'm actually going to do isn't double Clarion at all. I'm going to put a stop on my end step. I'm going to plus the Teferi.
Hold that thought.
With my opponent tapped out, I'm going to cast as large of an expansion explosion as I can. So we'll move to end step. We'll put the trigger on the stack. We'll tap for 2 blue, resolve the trigger. This way we'll have 2 more mana than we would otherwise. And we will expansion for 4. No, we will expansion for 5. And then we are going to discard many lands. So 1, 2, 3, and probably 4. Yeah, I'm confident I can find more lands if I need to. If I miss 1 land drop from here, We'll see, but it's probably not lethal, whereas having the right amount of spells is very important. Alright, there is the Niv-Mizzet. Let's hit it with the minus. The opponent will respond with a dive down. We'll hit that with a negate. The opponent will get to kill the Teferi, but we'll play another one. Oh, they have a shock, so it's not a dive down. Well, that's good. That's good. So let's let the opponent target this Niv trigger. All right, they still go at the Teferi in case I have a counter for the shock. That's smart. So we won't even play the negate, so they don't get another card. This is now 3 cards from the top. Let's play other Teferi. Get it moving.
There's no time for a break.
And now I'm probably countering any kind of draw spell I come across with the Sinister Sabotage. I'm going to pay 2 life to have an extra mana on this coming turn cycle. I may need to cast Negate and Sinister Sabotage to keep my opponent away from Niv-Mizzet for as long as possible. And now we're trying to wear out their resources. Murmuring Mystic is interesting because that is something that Double Clarion can clean up easy. But it's still probably worth fighting over just so I don't have to be doing Double Clarion and tapping out. And a Rawl is exactly what we need to get that Niv-Mizzet dead for good. 2 damage, another Crackling Drake. Yeah, that does get to resolve. Seal Away can deal with it pretty well. I don't like giving up the card. It's not something I have to be as afraid of, though. Still, once Niv comes down. Now, ooh, here's a good question. Do we expose Rawl with the Niv on the stack? When we actually could get deeper on cards. If our opponent pays 6, then they have 2 mana up. They can't do that much damage to Rawl. Then again, never underestimate Niv-Mizzet. And we still have a Teferi, though, that we can minus. I think we just go for it. We know what our opponent's play is going to be. They're going to cast Niv. I just have to make sure I can also seal away Crackling Drake as much as possible. I could also kill the Drake now.
Problem has a solution.
But I don't think that's the way.
Time to choose.
I'll take the land that doesn't hurt me, thank you. And I can still double seal away next turn because of the Teferi untapping, so we'll play the Search for Azcanta as well. And we'll kick it back over. Make sure we have 2 white. And we're going to have to tap carefully too to make sure that our seal away comes down. And here's Niv. Can't be countered. I mean, stop posting in comments that I should have countered it. First line of text on the card. And there are many lines. It's not unrealistic to miss that. And the opponent goes face. Decision paralysis leads to facial attack. Here's a seal away. Now, do they have negate, dive down? What do they have? They have dive down. All right. Here's second seal away. And no second dive down, thank God. And the opponent will get this trigger, but that won't kill Rawl. And now Rawl can minus and kill Niv.
Time for plan B.
The opponent chooses to go after Teferi. Oh, they have a chart, of course. Well, their last 2 cards worked out to be exactly what they needed. They'll get to draw 3 cards this way.
Want me to phase you out
But they're
of
still
time?
going after Teferi, not Rawl. I think that Rawl getting Niv permanently dead is the actual issue here. But the opponent, they saw Teferi and they saw red. They just hate that Teferi guy so much. Who could blame them? And there's a Cleansing Nova on top of the deck. How could I resist? Still, the Rawl minus is the way. Let's not give our opponent any more cards if we can help it.
Hold that thought.
And now we test our opponent's stamina, although who knows, they just drew a number of cards. Perhaps they're getting right back into the game. Let's just make, well, There's no way I'm going to need that much mana next turn, I don't think, unless the Revitalize draws me into some pretty silly stuff. And let's untap blue source in Azcanta. 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Let's fight over Drakes. And the opponent doesn't want to see. They don't want to see what happens next. Oh, so close. Can you feel it? Well, we have 2 Clarions. The meta is about 75% aggressive decks. If we keep this and our opponent's on control, we'll be very sad. But Clarion is like the thing that decides whether or not you play Magic against an aggro deck. It's so hard to mulligan away when you have any chance of making it work. And our opponent takes a mulligan. You can taste the Mythic right now. What is it? 2, 3 wins away, and our opponent has mulliganed to 5. I mean, when these things happen in your favor, it feels great. When they happen to you, it feels horrible. It's difficult, but when there are stakes, it's hard to get... It's really hard to kind of put into words how it feels when your opponent is having bad keeps. But your hand, it might be good. And in this case, might be really good if they're aggressive. We'll see. We don't know yet. There's a black mana. That typically only means Golgari these days. Usually that's like a sure thing to Golgari. But no, it's black-blue, and our hand just got a lot worse, as it almost doesn't do anything, especially if this Teferi gets thought erasured. It's Grixis, and it's a disinformation campaign. Excuse me, sorry. Tough call. I'm going to take the Clarions. Settle might be able to hit something bigger, but it's actually a much tougher call than it looks. Now, does our opponent hold counter magic up for the Teferi here? They do. Do we go for it then? I don't. I just drew a Spell Pierce. If I can play Teferi with a Spell Pierce or Niv-Mizzet with a Spell Pierce, that could be huge. We still need another blue. Another blue is required. We got it. All right. Let's go for it. It resolves. And our opponent doesn't have double black at this time for Vraska's Contempt. What they do have is probably an Eldest Reborn, but we are prepared. Yep, there's the Spell Pierce. Another Teferi off the top.
Hurry!
Debating whether or not to play a Niv there. I decided to draw first because the trigger, like the 1 damage, wasn't that important to me. I wanted to see if I could draw another counter. Honestly, since I don't, I'm going to go for the Niv, but I'm also going to run a bluff. I'm going to pay 2 life for this, even when I don't really have a good use for that, just to make my opponent think I have it and see how that affects how they play. So they go for another Eldest Reborn. I'm going to get rid of this Teferi.
Stop that now.
And pass. Since I do have a backup, I would definitely want to cycle these cards. So we're going to play you. We're going to play you, and I want to gain a lifelink for the turn, and the opponent can't even bear to watch. Tough mulligan to 5, but my god, are we going to final boss? Final boss, friends. It's been a hot run today. We haven't lost much, we've won a lot, and we're going to final boss with my deck of choice, Jeskai, for Mythic, with Mythic on the line. Best of 1. All the stakes you could ask for. I honestly didn't know, recording the series, that I'd get this close to Mythic today. I thought it would take a lot longer and that I'd be able to make a lot more video, but YouTube, if you get to witness the Mythic, then so be it. Oh, this is a tough hand to keep on the draw. It's good against control. It's good against slow decks. It gets smashed by aggro. I'm going to try it. I'm going to try it. I don't have any idea what my opponent could be bringing, but they took a mulligan. and they scried bottom. Let's see what's coming for me. It's a blue source. That's what we wanted to see. That is exactly what we wanted. It's a Jeskai mirror, and we are on the draw with 2 counterspells in hand, and now another Planeswalker. Playing the mirror for Mythic? What more could you ask for? Now, I could negate this. My opponent is on a mulligan. If I try to keep them away from counterspells and just keep their draw broken and they scried bottom, I'm going to take a risk. I'm feeling risky. I'm negating this opt. If I can get them stuck on mana or just keep their draw awkward, I think we've got a chance. Oh, well, they hit just fine there. But I'm going to sabotage just about anything they do to try to fix this hand as well. There's search for Azcanta. No, absolutely not. We need a land on top. Instead, we have a Clarion, which is useless, so I'm really happy to put that away. And our own search for Azcanta? Yes, please. Pretty please. Things are all going our way, but what if our opponent just has a hand of counterspells and none of these resolve? I guess it'll be up to Niv. Oh man, I have to graveyard you. I really want the land. All right, let's force the issue. Let's force the issue. Let's make our opponent have a counterspell just about every turn for the rest of the game. Raw is valuable. It can kill an opposing Niv. They're a long way away from it, but you don't know. You just don't know where things are going to end up. And the opponent has Sabotage. It's probably the best counter they need, especially if they put something in the graveyard here. They do not, so it must be a land. It must be a land. But I've got so many threats, I'm just going to try to force them down my opponent's throat. Graveyard that Settle, no doubt. All right. Let's try for Teferi again. And that's a scoop! Ah, those last few games, honestly, were anticlimactic, but it's worth it. Wow. We did it, my friends. And you saw that 262 number. We're ranked 262 in the world based on the climb. It's hard to say how many mythics there are. People have been guessing that it's like 400 or 500, but I think it'll be well over 1,000 probably this week. I think that a lot more people are getting it. Where is it? It's under profile. There it is. So there you have it. We have 26 days to enjoy our mythicness. Then we drop down to gold, I believe, and re-begin the climb. If you're wondering what my season rewards are, they don't really matter. As Mythic, I'll get 5 packs and 1,000 gold. It's a little bit for the amount of time that you put into it, the amount of play that you give it, but it's more about the personal achievement and feeling whatever it is feels that the Mythic gets you. And honestly, if you in your heart don't feel like Mythic is worth it or something to be excited about, you shouldn't go for it. But please don't step on the people who do enjoy it and are proud of it. Now, I am also, by the same token, I'm very aware that Mythic doesn't make me one of the greatest Magic players in the world. It is simply something to say that I did this in Arena. It's like climbing Mount Everest. It doesn't absolutely make you the greatest climber, but it is a journey that you went on to prove that you love mountaineering, or in this case, Magic the Gathering, and that you endured it, that you survived it, that your heart could take it. That is the best kind of analogy I can make, although they're very different skill sets. Please don't think I actually believe that getting Mythic is as hard as climbing Mount Everest. I know very well it isn't. Simply an analogy to show what it means to some people and what it means to me. And I'm happy to do it with my YouTube crowd. My Twitch crowd is going to be jealous, but very excited here today to share my Mythic with you. And I was glad to do it with Jeskai, the deck I enjoy the most compared to all those aggro decks. Thank you so much for watching. As always, I will see you in the next Mythic video. Goodbye. My YouTube channel is proudly supported by HauntedFlower.com. shipping officially licensed apparel anywhere in the world, and now featuring Magic the Gathering apparel and accessories. If you use the promo code CGB at your checkout, you can save 10% on any order. That's the promo code CGB at checkout on hauntedflower.com. That's hauntedflower.com.